So a container with square base, vertical sides, and a closed top is to be made from 1,000 feet squared of material. Find the dimensions of the container with the greatest volume. Right. So the first thing I want to do with this problem is I want to kind of draw a picture. So it's a container with square base. So maybe we have something that looks like this. All right, maybe we have something that looks like this. All right, maybe we have something that looks like this. Square base. Right. Let me see if I can get something. This has some square base, right? All right, maybe we have something that looks something like this. So we have some some sort of container with square base, all right? So it has a square base, so we could kind of assume that this will be your base, and this is just x times x, which will give us x squared, some sort of square base, right? The height, however, is different. The height will be y, right? Because again, the volume of this container is just the square base times your height, right? Your base times your height. But we have a square base, so it will be x squared times y. So your volume in this case will just be x squared times y. Right. Now it's very important to note that this now will become a surface area problem because of the three-dimensional structure that we're dealing with. A box in reality, right? A box in reality. So we could think of the surface area as being 2x squared plus 4xy. We really have 4 of these y on either side. 1, 2, 3, 4. We really have 4 of these y. We also have 4 x's to match these y's in the beginning, and we have 2x squareds, which is an x squared on the top and an x squared on the bottom, an x squared on the bottom and an x squared on the top, right? So this will be your surface area, and this whole surface area is really equal to 1,000 feet squared. And it should make sense because when we usually talk about surface area, we talk about units in we talk about squared units, right? So it's very important to note that this is actually a surface area question now, where this 2x squared plus 4xy coordinates to the whole kind of sort of pyramid, but we're not doing pyramid, we're doing surface area. So once we do that, we could go ahead now and solve for some value. It could be x or y because we know that we can't take a derivative with two variables. In this case, doesn't make any sense, right? So I'm gonna solve for, I don't know, let's solve for y, right? So 4xy is now gonna equal 1,000 minus 2x squared, right? Divided by 4 on both sides. My y is just gonna equal to, we'll divide by 4x on both sides. My y is just gonna be equal to 1,000 1,000 over 4x minus 2x squared over 4x. And it's helpful to know that we could go ahead and simplify this further, right? So y is really equal to 250 over x, right? 4 goes into 2 goes into 4 2 times 4. 2 goes into 4 goes into 4 1 time. 4 goes into 1,000 250 times over x over 2. All right. Again, 1, 2 goes into this once, 2 goes into 4 twice, or x leaves and this cancel out. So really our y is just 250 over x minus x over 2 simplified. So now that we found our y, we could just go ahead and plug it into this formula. So our volume now is going to be equal to x squared times 250 over x minus x over 2. Again, now we could simplify. So one of these x's will cancel, which will leave 1 on the bottom. But we also have an x here that will multiply by this 250 here. So our volume is going to be equal to 250x, all right, minus, well, we can't cancel anything here. So x squared times x is just x cubed over 2x, right? So now I'm going to simplify this. Well, not 2x, I'm sorry about that. Over 2, right? So now we've reached a stage when we could take a derivative. Everything is simplified. So v prime will just be 250, right, minus, well, the derivative of 3x squared is just derivative of x cubed is just 3x squared. I'm just going to simply multiply that by 2, all divided by 2 squared. And that v prime in a simpler fashion would just be 250 minus, well, 3 times 6, 3 times 3, 2 times 3 is 6x squared, right? So 6x squared over 4, and v prime really just simplifies to 250 minus 3 halves x squared, right? 2 goes into this 3 times, 2 goes in that 4 times. For those of you who are wondering how I took this derivative, again, it's not, I just took it in a faster step, but it's literally your u over v. You could do that product rule, but you'll get the same thing. So don't worry about that. That's just basic calculus now at this point. All right, so now we've gotten to this step, and all we have to do now is just set our derivative equal to 0. All right, so you can imagine to solve for x in this case, I'm going to find a common denominator first. So this will be 2 and this will be 2, right? So this now will be 500 minus 3x squared all over 2, and that's going to equal to 0. And now I could cancel out my 2's out by multiplying by 2 on both sides, and I get 500 minus 3x squared is equal to 0. Divided by well, I can move this over here. So 500 is equal to 3x squared. Get rid of my 3. And so 500 divided by 3. 500 divided by 3. That's going to equal x squared. And now I just take the square root of both sides. And x is going to equal the square root of 500 divided by 4 feet in units feet. All right. Now, we always talk about taking the square root of plus or minus, but in this case, we can't have a negative number because we're dealing with something to maximize our volume, right? So it will just be the positive side of things. So now that we found our x value, let's find our y value, right? So again, we already have our y here. Or y here, and we have our y here. I'm going to use a simpler formula. You could plug in the x value into either of these formulas, but I'm just going to use this formula here. So my y is just going to equal to 1000 minus 2x squared over 4x, and all I do is just combine these 4x, right? This is the same thing as this, right? So now I'm just going to plug my x value in. 1000 minus 2 times square root of 500 divided by 3 squared all over 4x. Well, again, all I'm doing here is getting rid of my square root. So really what I have is 1000 minus 2 times the square. The square will get rid of the square root. Right, so this will be 2 times 500, which is be 1000 over 3, all divided by 4x. All right, now I can just find a common denominator, which should be 3. Multiply this by 3. All right, this will be y. And so my y here, will be equal to 3 times 1000 is just 3000. Minus 1000 is just 2000. So the top will just be simplified to 2000 over 3 divided by 4 times the square root of 500 over 3. And I kind of left it out all along, but I just decided to plug it in here. All right. So this will be 2000 divided by 3 divided by 4 times the square root of 500 divided by 3. Again, these will multiply. Right, so really what I have is y is going to be equal to 2000 over 3 multiplied by 1 over 4 times the square root of 500 divided by 3. All right, because remember this number is all over 1. All right, and then when they're dividing fractions, all we do is flip and multiply. All right, so these 3 and this 4 can multiply. So my y is going to be equal to 2000 divided by 12 times the square root of 500 divided by 3. And this simplifies to 500 divided by 3. And so my y value is basically 500 divided by 3 times the square root of 500 over 3 feet. And this will be my final answer. And this is just a more complicated version of this answer. These answers are around 12.9-ish, right? So these answers are exactly the same, and they should make sense because we're dealing with a container that is square.